Hi, this is Molly Barnes, 88.5 KCSN Art News, Arts and Roots Radio. I am delighted, really delighted to have as my guest tonight, Bruria Finkel. Bruria, I used to show her years ago. She's an artist. She's a top curator. She has an exhibit opening next Saturday at Track 16 in Bergamot Station of her own work. It's called the Complete, how do you say it?
Aleph.
Aleph Series. Welcome, Bruria.
Thank you, Molly.
Tell me how Aleph came along. What is this about? This is an extraordinary, extraordinary story.
Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And what happened originally in 1966, my friend Jack Hirschman, who is a poet laureate of San Francisco today.
Wasn't he married to Ruth Seymour at
yes,
KCRW?
Yes, you
We're kind
know
of
the
crossing
stories.
stations. Yeah, go on. Go on.
He gave me a pamphlet of a very ancient manuscript, a Cabalist by the name of Avraham Abulafia. And he said to me, "Can you read it?" And I said, "Well, yes." And then he said, "Can you translate it?" And I said, "Well, I'll try." And I did. At the time, he and Ruth and the family were in Europe, and so our pages kind of came across the oceans.
Yeah.
And I did translate it, and David Meltzer, the poet who had the magazine called Tree, actually published it. And many years later, really, is when all of a sudden the work that I translated and three more books of Abulafia that I translated, which are not still awaiting publication, began to really push my work. And I was still involved with kind of putting it together and seeing, and the images began to crowd my visions. And so I began to do that.
Then I saw the Aleph. I arrive now at the ineffable core of my story, and here begins my despair as a writer. All language is a set of symbols whose use among them is speakers assume a shared past. How then can I translate into words the limitless Aleph which my floundering mind can scarcely encompass? Mystics, faced with the same problem, fall back on symbols to signify the Godhead. One Persian speaks of a bird that somehow is all birds. Alanus the Insulis of a sphere whose center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere. Ezekiel of a four-faced angel who at one and the same time moves east and west, north and south. Not in vain do I recall these inconceivable analogies. They bear some relation to the Aleph. Perhaps the gods might grant me a similar metaphor, but then this account would become contaminated by literature, by fiction. Really, what I want to do is impossible for any listing of an endless series is doomed to be infinitesimal. In that single gigantic instant, I saw millions of acts, both delightful and awful. Not one of them occupied the same point in space.
Tell us about the pieces, the four pieces that will be in the show at Track 16. Oh. They're amazing.
Thank you. These are called the Divine Chariot series. They're made of bronze. They're 8 feet tall, and they really deal with myths and my idea of symbolism. They are influenced by the Kabbalistic ideas of Avraham Abulafia, but they are not his visions. These are really my interpretations of the ideas that I translated and read.
The in of his head, the head of his in, the end of his in of his end, the end of his end, the head of his end, the end of his head, the head of his head, the in of his in,